I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding. Even the most rudimentary sense of life or death was even the most rudimentary sense of life or death was
What's up, everybody? It's B-Show Brian J coming back for another edition of Horror Reanimated. Hopefully your weekly 30 minutes where I take you inside the what could be, what could have been, what ifs of horror movies, and even some original ideas, which is what we're going to get to tonight. This is the Halloween 1978 hip-hop instrumental by the Ghost Grinder on YouTube. How you doing? What's up, everybody? It's Brian. This week doing something a little bit different, something I haven't done in a while. Kind of an original idea. Again, we try to keep these about 30 minutes because I do enough shit that if you want to follow me, whether it's on Break the Apocalypse, whether you want to follow me on the Wrestling Reanimated, the Horror Reanimated, the horror history videos that I've done, whatever the case may be. I appreciate your time, so I try to be conscious of it. So 30 minutes probably in and out with this, but I thought it was a really interesting idea. Taking two icons of 80s horror, kind of mashed them together in a weird combination with a couple of different potential ideas. I went deep on some of this stuff, so I'm going to try to step back and give you the Donald Pleasance, Tom Atkins double bill or co-star. But if you like what we do here, whether it's on YouTube, B-Show Brian, bshowpodcast.com, I haven't plugged that in a while. Wherever you're listening or watching, please make sure you subscribe and you give us a review or leave a comment. Let us know how we're doing, because I had to take some videos down due to my work to get things approved, and unfortunately it kind of killed my channel dead. So I like putting this stuff out. I know some of you guys enjoy it. Thanks, Jock Tastico, always leaving awesome ideas. But we're talking horror tonight. Next week, he sent me a cool one. It's like a Power Rangers Nightmare on Elm Street mashup. I did read the first two issues of the comic. It was a graphic novel someone did independently. Very talented. Not necessarily my speed as far as the story goes, but it's something that I want to review next week, possibly, and also kind of give my spin on what I might have done in that situation. But again, if you like what we do, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at bshowbrian. And you can also follow me on YouTube if you're watching. It's just search B-Show Brian's House of Horror, I think it is, until I change it. Because I change it frequently. I don't know. Try to make it easy. Sometimes it gets hard. But this week we're talking about Tom Atkins, who is pretty much a mythical figure at this point in horror and and sorry for the bad lighting and shadow and stuff. This is more for mood for me. I like to put them up on YouTube because it's fun, and some people like to watch these, but the lighting and everything's more for me. So I apologize if you don't like it, but it's the way it is. So Tom Atkins played Dr. Chalice in Halloween 3, which to my great surprise and bewilderment has become a cult movie, a cult classic, and it's kind of gaining a little audience on the internet, and it's got more appreciation over the years. And so is Tom himself as an actor. He was in Night of the Creeps and the Lethal Weapon films. He played a dad in Creepshow, I believe Creepshow or Creepshow 2. And he's almost become a combination of like Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris and Al Bundy. I almost said Ted Bundy, for Christ's sakes. But he's a veteran actor, a career actor. He is in his 70s now, still performing, from what I've seen or heard, on stage in some theatrical stuff and in some movies. Yeah, I'm Halloweened out tonight. But yeah, he's almost, like I said, a mixture of like Chuck Norris and And Al Bundy, he's like an everyman type of icon for these films, and young men in these PC culture days can kind of live vicariously through the exploits of Tom Atkins, the hard drinking, or the characters of Tom Atkins, the hard drinking, womanizing, tail grabbing, chain smoking. There's something in there for everybody, whatever. And on the other side, Donald Pleasance, who needs no introduction. Donald Pleasance is Dr. Loomis and played in the movie Phenomena. He was Blofeld in one of the James Bond movies, just an incredible, one of the greatest character actors of that era. And unfortunately, not with us. He passed away in the mid-90s. And again, he is another mythical figure. So I figured, what better way, or what better thing to do for a horror reanimated than try to put these two together in a film? And I don't know, I came up with a couple different ideas. A road trip came to mind. Scotch and bourbon came to mind. Just maybe, to me, that's what they kind of seemed like. Like, Tom, I might call him Chalice. So I mean Atkins if I say Chalice, so I apologize ahead of time. But Atkins, more of a bourbon guy. Pleasance is a Scotch guy, a little more refined, but they're still kind of got a hard edge. But some fun stuff, because Donald Pleasance was such a distinguished individual, and in his films he carried some sort of authority, and especially with Dr. Loomis, which is what most people watching this channel or horror movies probably know him as best of all. He was also a priest in Prince of Darkness, another John Carpenter film. So numerous roles, but each one carried at that time, because he was an elder statesman. Pleasance always had somewhat of an authority or perceived authority with a lot of the films during that day. And again, maybe because it was in roles like priests and in psychiatrists and things like that. I think he was a professor or a doctor in Phenomena, which is an underrated Argento movie from around the same time. But I was really thinking about the possibilities of those two in an 80s style film. And I wanted to do, instinct goes to a shoot 'em up type of movie, right? But then the reality is that both were men of age at that point. Donald Pleasance was in his 70s or late 60s, mid to late 60s, and wasn't going to be doing much action. And that would leave Atkins to carry the physicality of the film. And again, at a guy in his mid-40s, rounding 50, I'm not sure if he was up for that. I had all sorts of ideas. So looking at horror, I wanted to step outside, because I have a tendency to focus on 80s slashers, and I wanted to step outside the slasher a little bit and do something a little different. So I came up with a couple different ideas. I came up with a lot of ideas, but I really fleshed out 3 that I thought were pretty good. 3, is it 3 or 4? 3. The first one was a political thing, and obviously that was because of what's going on right now. It's just a topical deal. Politics, elections, secret societies and groups, and people working behind each other's backs. That type of thing jumped out because of what was going on right now with American politics. So there's Westerns, there's different ways you can go in different types of movies. So I tried to come up with a couple different types. And again, tried to keep in mind, if not gunslinging like a Western, at least some sort of gun action or whatever the case. And Atkins' characters had that hard edge reputation, and Chalice may be the one that he's most infamous for, where he's this doctor who goes off, leaves his kids and his ex-wife around Halloween, and he goes off to investigate the death of this guy and shack up with a young girl to get drunk and smoke cigarettes and bang for a weekend. So that is kind of the reputation that the meme has. It's really become a meme more so than an icon. But and I'm sure Tom Atkins is a very nice guy. and is nothing like Dr. Chalice. But, there was that. There was Night of the Creeps, a couple different films that gave him or his characters a certain hard edge. But that's what I was trying to look for is stuff that would be fun to do with a character like that. Pretty much Dr. Chalice in different iterations. And Donald Pleasance would be, dependent on what he was doing, still somewhat of an authority. But talking about the politician angle that I was looking at was, again, Atkins is a hard-drinking, cigarette-smoking, womanizing everyman, right? And I put Pleasance, I kind of envisioned as your traditional politician's politician. And the idea was that they have to come together to save humanity, which would be very tough to do. And again, looking at American politics, I was kind of coming at this a couple days removed from this, very, very cult of personality style political battle between the right and the left, or Democrats and Republicans. So I was trying to think of, in times like this, trying to have two conflicting sides diametrically opposed to one another coming together to save humanity. And I didn't want to define it too much, but looking at, a cult or someone who's demon possessed or vampires, but something that has to do with a cult. And the idea was, the thing I kind of settled on in my head was maybe Chalice is your everyman, and he runs for president, or he runs for Senate, or he runs some sort of political office. And you have Donald Pleasance's character is, again, your career politician. Very reserved, dare I say, conservative, maybe not conservative, but very poised, diplomatic. You're just, again, your old school traditional politician. And then here comes Chalice, or see, I keep calling him Chalice. Here comes Atkins, and he's somewhat younger. He's a bit of a rebel, and it's almost like no matter what he does, people are still going to vote for him because people identify with him, because he's imperfect, because he likes to drink, he likes to smoke, he's caught having these sexual escapades, the taxpayer dime, and people just think he's great because they remind him of a TV show dad. And to me, in the 80s, this would really, really make sense. So the idea would be he comes along, maybe as the Pleasance character is making this huge run for presidency, or in Europe, it would be parliament. But here's the idea would be, it's finally going to be Pleasance's character's time to shine. At the end of his career, maybe plug in like the Joe Biden type of thing. Here he is. He's in his late 60s, early 70s. Never been able to get it. Now he's right about to become president. And then you have this just train wreck. And he comes in and he becomes president. Overwhelmingly so. Which maybe that puts Pleasance out of a job. Maybe he becomes so despondent that he leaves Washington, or he leaves politics, or whatever the case may be. And maybe remove that a couple years and have, maybe Atkins' character is a certain amount of years into his run as president. And maybe he's so popular that they've suspended terms. And that, almost Star Wars style, he's got so much overwhelming support that they extend his presidency to pretty much whenever he doesn't want it anymore. And the implications of this, for this character who really doesn't care about what's going on, he's just in it. Maybe his family were in politics, and maybe he was the black sheep, and maybe he got into it by accident. I don't know. I didn't really think that far. I thought about the story as opposed to the background of the characters. But again, just this everyman type of guy. A dude you want to sit down and have a beer with. And when he goes to Washington, he's this weird combination of maybe of like aloof and himself. Like, he doesn't lose himself. He stays himself. But he just doesn't concern himself with the inner workings of the government, right? So what ends up happening, right? The thing I was thinking maybe is he's being used as a tool of people actually running the show behind him, behind the scenes. And they're using this overwhelming support to kind of keep the wool over the eyes of the American people, or for, again, my European friends, the European people, while they kind of scheme and plot behind him. But we don't know what's being plotted, right? And you have Pleasance, again, despondent at home, either outside of the system, or maybe he's still working in the system on a lower level, like Congress or Parliament, again, I mentioned. So here's where it gets interesting. What I was thinking of happening is maybe maybe Chalice hooks up with a woman, which is par for the course for Atkins' character. But maybe her brother is part of this political cult. Or whatever it is, but she's tagging along. She falls for him. They have a fling. And she gives him this insider knowledge of this stuff that's been going on in Washington for decades, or in England for decades. So the thing I was thinking of is that there's this cult, again, controlling everything. He's led in by his conquest. So again, and I did this a few days ago, so if I lose my place, I apologize. But the idea would be, here he is. He's this joke. He's this outsider. He's this. He's that. He's a womanizer. He's getting caught with these sexual escapades. But it's one of those escapades that leads him to the key to figuring this out. Something that he would completely no understanding of. And maybe, yeah, I was thinking Pleasance was still working within the system. But a brother, or I think it would make more sense if it was her dad, maybe. Maybe the girl who gives him access, her dad is one of the lead guys, or whatever the case may be. And then you have, it was more like a plot. I kept wanting to shoot him up. But this ended up developing in my head like not a whodunit, but almost like a mystery plot, more a sci-fi than a horror movie. And the idea or the implication would be that Chalice now has to get together with, not Chalice, Jesus, Tom Atkins' character has to get together with Donald Pleasance, because Pleasance has connections. Pleasance knows people who are in this cult and can act like he's in, even if he's not. He can blend in. He can give Atkins access that even the girl couldn't, because she's just some. I kept imagining like Paris Hilton, where she was just kind of this ditzy, know-nothing, bumbling blonde, right, daughter of this rich guy. I'm thinking something like that. Like it's not a political daughter. It's not someone with aspirations. It's someone who would be seen as beneath the cult. But she drives Daddy's Porsche and has his American Express. So the idea would be that they would become head-to-head with Atkins Pleasance, this cult leader, this cult or this coven or den of vampires or whatever the case may be. But the thing I kind of centered on was inspired by conspiracy theories of like Bohemian Grove and Skull and Bones, something like that, where the idea would be the cult has gathered in safe places. And their goal is to launch missiles on highly populated areas for population reduction and things like that, because the richer people can hide. And this wouldn't be just government. I mean, like heads of companies and corporations, elite people would get tipped off to go to your bunker, go to a safe place, go here, go there, go to this missile silo, go to this base, here's your access. Very quietly, they would kind of disperse, maybe over a holiday weekend. I don't know. I didn't think that far. And then the elite would hide and then would bomb the cities and kind of eliminate everybody. in the same vein as Halloween 3, where it was like a culling of population control. But they would reduce the population. They would have, the rich people would have more resources. They would have less people, in the system taking those resources, and they could, spread their infinite wealth now amongst each other and repopulate. So that was my general idea for this. That was the plot they uncover. And Atkins would be the key to this because they couldn't do this without him being front and center. They were able to do things with him that they couldn't do with Donald Pleasance's character. So basically what would happen is the plan, they're supposed to come out hiding after the dust settles and enjoy their brave new world. And Atkins, when he's challenging them, is pretty much told that since he had universal trust with the people, that he has to deliver, the stay-at-home address because they have to get people to stay home. Shelter in place. And again, I was thinking about it based on what's going on with COVID right now. Here's this national emergency. It's this untold thing. And by the way, I believe COVID. I'm not saying... not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just using it as fodder. But, there's a shelter-in-place order, stay in your homes, hunker down, with the intent that they trust him. And maybe this cult has not ever come across someone that they couldn't corrupt. So, again, much like the Emperor in the Last Jedi, he's so blinded by his own arrogance that they don't even think that Atkins' character would deny them. And maybe to hedge their bets, they offer up Pleasance and say, well, if you won't do it, we'll just shoot you. And we know, Pleasance, you've wanted to be president. You'll preside over the greatest economy, this new world. You'll essentially be king. You can ride out your last days in, being fed grapes by naked, beautiful, large-breasted women by pools and shit. You know what I mean? Like, just promise him whatever. 1 million barrels of scotch. And there he goes, sounding like Elf again. 1 million barrels of scotch. But that was kind of the idea I had. And it comes down to the end where, almost like the Snake Plissken thing, where the president's giving the address. And at the very end, Atkins gets up and he goes to launch the missiles. He has a heavy heart and he's telling everyone, stay in place. You'll be safe if you stay in your homes. But as he does it, he hits the button to launch the missiles. The elite start popping champagne. Pleasance is disappointed. They finally got him. He was this uncorruptible guy. And it would be like even in his mortal hatred of Atkins' character, even Pleasance is disappointed because even he knew, and again, I'm just thinking through this now, maybe even he knows that he could never be the honest guy that Atkins is. He could never be that everyman because he's just too steeped in politics. And then all of a sudden, as the elite are popping champagne, bombs start hitting those safe spaces and taking out those elite people, right? So now Atkins, what he's done in his final hour, and maybe he was with them. I don't know. There would have to be some sort of gimmick where you can see what's going on in the safe place where Atkins is with these cult people, and maybe Pleasance is watching from closed circuit somewhere else, maybe in the White House. But again, work it out. This is just an idea. But Atkins maybe sacrifices himself, and in his final address, gives his power over to Donald Pleasance's character. Because even though Atkins has redeemed himself, yes, Atkins' character has redeemed himself as noble and caring and all these things. Now what he does is he recognizes his flaws and says, I can't do this. He can. He's the guy you need to lead you. So he gives him, not only does he sacrifice himself maybe and gives up his power, but he also hands over things to the right guy who should have been right for the job all along. So the level-headed authority to lead the people in the new world. That was my little note. And then you can also give a little hint that maybe Donald Pleasance's VP is a secret cult member. Or maybe there's like a little tattoo or something as he walks by, or he's got a ring on, something, some sort of secret symbol, right? that all these crazy conspiracy nuts look for. But again, the theme would be having to come together to defeat evil and save the world, essentially. But it's two older guys. To me, that wasn't very climactic. There wasn't a lot of gunslinging to be had. It was more like more political movements and things like that. So that didn't excite me all that much. Then I came up with another one. This is a short one that I'll get to because I know I promised I'd try to keep it about a half hour. And the one I really like, I went into a lot of detail with. So the next one was a couple of priests. So basically, Atkins would be a hard-drinking, womanizing priest. Pleasance would be the church's expert on the occult. And they would stumble on some sort of satanic sect within the church, and they have to stop them. But of course, they're at opposite ends. They're bickering, but working together with lots of drinking and lots of bullets. This one, to me, was like... you get the holy hand grenade, right, in Monty Python. I imagined like this secret room of armaments that Pleasance has. Like they get to this point where Pleasance and Atkins come together, but Atkins and Pleasance fills him in on like all these different occult things, and they flip. And this was inspired a lot by John Carpenter's Vampires. But maybe Pleasance is explaining all this occult shit that the church is involved in, or tries to keep a lid on. Almost like the Men in Black in a way, and fills in Atkins on information about this stuff that he's uncovered. They piece it together, and then Atkins is like, Christ almighty, what are we going to do? And Pleasance like opens up this door, almost like Men in Black, opens up this door, and it's like the holy hand grenade and these cross-shaped guns and all sorts of shit. Maybe there's like ninja star versions of like the body of Christ, right? Guns that shoot holy water or bullets with holy water in them. Capsules and stuff. So whether it's a satanic sect or vampires or whatever, but it's like all these religious iconography style armaments, right? But the thing I came up with was, it's a play on something I came up with in high school, actually. I made just a goofy little movie with a couple of friends of mine. And in the movie, these guys tried to dig up the body of what they thought was Christ, and they resurrected him. But since it wasn't Christ, it corrupted the guy. He ended up they raised the Antichrist. So that's what I was thinking, is like maybe this satanic sect within the church, they're trying to stop. They think they've located the body of Christ, or maybe even like Mary Magdalene, or someone from the family line of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, or something like that, a lost child. Again, maybe some echoes of Dogma in there. But they look to resurrect him with the spirit of Satan, so they want to bring about the end times and the Antichrist. And they're hoping to serve as like, I tried to come up with, symbolism from the Bible. 12 was a big one. 12 tribes of Israel, all this stuff. So, they wanted to serve as the 12 high priests of Satan during the end times because they're this crazy religious sect. And this is based on, there I go again, sounding like Elf. This is based on a famous murder case from Toledo, where I'm from. Easter Sunday murder of a nun by a priest. And some people had claimed that there was a satanic cult within the church that does sacrifice and murders people and things like that, and that she had discovered something and was killed by this priest who was a member. Now, the Toledo police has never, as far as I know, made any arrests or uncovered any more information that they've made public about this sort of thing, although there was apparently some proof that this guy that had belonged to some stuff. So hopefully nothing happens to me now, but the point being, this is inspired again by some sort of a true story. But no, these guys want to be the 12 high priests of Satan, and it's up to Atkins and Pleasance to blow them away as two trigger-happy priests, which I thought was really cool, because if you have, again, keep the same character and just put him in a religious collar, he's, I don't want to say fucking schoolgirls and stuff. That's a little bit much. Maybe 18-year-olds, or maybe teachers' assistants. That's fair. That's not as creepy. He's a hard-drinking dude who's fucking teachers' assistants and teachers and the nuns and stuff. And again, that was the common theme with that is that is what people know that meme as is Dr. Chalice is this hard drinking, womanizing dude. So it would be his flaws and his craving of the flesh that leads him to the truth and the promised land. That little twist of fate and irony there. So that was part of the idea. The other one was that they face a coven of witches inside the church. And again, Atkins would uncover through his serial fornicating with young nuns. So maybe they're like the administrators of this convent or something, and they discover some kind of plot, this coven of witches or whatever that operate within the church. Maybe the coven worships a woman that was actually a witch. And this I wanted to set in Salem around Halloween. So there's actually two different ideas, but I kind of had them break off of the same big one. But, if you set it in Salem around Halloween, maybe the coven worships, because you had the witch trials in Salem. And my thought was, there was a ton of innocent blood spilled. But what if what if one of the women they did kill was really a witch? And again, this was a little inspired, or after, I guess I should say, after I thought of it, I noticed some parallels to John Carpenter's Vampires again. But in this case, maybe they worship a woman who was killed and who was actually a witch, and because they're witches, they know who she is. And maybe the tale was handed down from coven den mother to den mother, whatever you want to call her. So the other idea was maybe they're ultimately part of a larger sect with ties all around the world through the churches, and maybe they're arranging for like a female pope or something who is actually the resurrected witch from Salem. And if she sits on the throne and puts on the hat, it's, ties into like cosmic horror or something where it just, and that was another idea that I had was, I didn't write that down. Maybe they discover when Pleasance lets him in on the occult stuff, maybe he lets Atkins' character know, this Jesus stuff, and it all kind of happened, but it's all cosmic. And it's how the earth came to be made and the universe came to be made, how we came to be made. But we can't really fathom the truth. This is all stories for us to learn it, but we can't really, our brains would explode if we tried. And because of that, that's, if she sits on the throne because it's ceremonial and it has these magic ties to, the cosmos, then maybe it'll open a rift in the universe and release, almost picture Calypso from Pirates of the Caribbean. She's a human form, but then when they release her, she is a force of nature. Similar thing there. She sits on the throne. They go through the ceremony to crown her pope, which would essentially crown her the ruler of the cosmos in a way, if everything ties back into like cosmic type of shit. Then maybe she would be released from her human bonds or whatever, and then a rift would open up in space, and then in comes like some fucking Cthulhu squid monster, and that's what she really is. It's her true form. So, and again, you could go through a lot of bullets getting to that point, and then at the end, they have to do some sort of ceremony to stop it. Plus the idea of like a giant gash opening up in the sky when Atkins has spent the entire film as a serial fornicator just seemed a little bit poetic to me. And out of this gash in the sky is birthed this pretty much the evil queen of the universe that he has to now stop. Again, fate, twist of fate. The last idea that I'll leave you with, and hopefully you enjoy this one, because I had a lot of fun going through this one the other night. I think I wrote this one last, and I went to fucking town. So I'm just going to read and remember what I can of what I was thinking when I read it. But basically, it's a Western. And my idea was, there's a rumor, not like Atlantis, but a similar thing, where like there's a rumor of a town that's rich in gold in the West. And it's so rich that gold dust hangs in the air. And it has people from all over the country flocking to it to strike it rich. But no one's reported back anything yet. And people have been heading there for some time. So I I'd have Donald Pleasance as an eccentric drifter with a shadowy past, and he's looking for a place to lay low. And maybe he lives on the outskirts of the town. Atkins, again, a hard-drinking... I would have him a former outlaw, living under a new identity. And this is partially inspired by history, because there's some rumors and legends that Billy the Kid, after, instead of dying, he escaped his death and started a new life under a different identity as a guy on the straight and narrow. So similar idea where he would be a hard-drinking former outlaw and a sharpshooter and trigger happy and all that stuff, but he's living under a new identity, almost like Kurt Russell in Tombstone. He gave up the life of being a lawman, and now he wants to go make his fortune. And what they notice is that the longer people are in the town, they almost seem like hypnotized or entranced. So it's not a zombie movie necessarily, but they almost seem zombie-like. They all work. They work long hours. That's all they care about is finding the gold. But like this weird shit. I'm thinking like A21 shit, like Hereditary shit, like stuff you don't notice on the peripheral. Like they're mining, but they're not really mining. They're doing other stuff, but you don't really know what they're doing. But all they're doing is working, right? I would have maybe, you can see a strange gold haze in the air, like gold dust. And maybe the fruit from the trees comes in gold, and the leaves on the trees turn gold. Maybe the crops all turn gold. But like everything coming up from the town is essentially gold. So it's not necessarily made of solid bullion gold, but it's gold colored. Everything is like yellow. But then people start falling ill and dying. And at some point, as fast as people come to Gold Dust Valley is what I ended up naming it, they're dropping like flies. The undertaker's working double time. Bodies are piling up in the morgue faster than they can bury them. And maybe Pleasance at this time is raving. And maybe people know who he is, but he's the crazy, right? He's the crazy Ralph. He's raving about a reckoning and time has run out, or maybe he's run out of town. Stay in your shack or whatever on the outskirts. And maybe Atkins' character realizes what's going on, that something's not right, and he starts packing up to leave. And again, while he's in town, he's been with the whores and shit, right? Because that's what he would do. He'd go in, he'd drink, he'd make his money, and at night he'd gamble and hit up the whorehouse, right? The brothel. And I'd have him with a young woman, spots an odd wound, and maybe she says it's from like a bee sting or something. And they start going heavy. This wouldn't be a whore. This is just a woman he met at the bar. Goes back to wherever. And they start going heavy. Again, I really put some thought into this, but she starts to get sick, right? So she runs to wherever, trough or whatever the case may be, and she starts throwing up or gagging. And she gags and gags and gags so hard, and when she does, eventually a huge yellow worm, like a giant grubworm type thing, comes out of her mouth. And she starts to heave harder, and smaller ones, but more, spill out of her mouth and her nostrils and like every orifice. And she's heaving so hard and straining that her eyes pop. And like all these little like maggots start coming out of her eye sockets onto the floor. So then you've got Atkins going crazy and he's screaming, and she's screaming when she can get sounds out, and she's dying on the floor because her eyeballs popped out and these things are like coming out of her face, right? And Atkins is freaking out. So now the people in the town start waking up and coming out of the bars and stuff. So Atkins is stomping on the little creatures, the worms. As the girl falls on the floor dead, her face is mush, her body is all gross. And if you can't tell, this would be a creature movie. And the sheriff comes in because he hears, something's going on. And as Atkins was stomping these little creatures out, there's blood everywhere, the girl's dead, he realizes it's his daughter by what she's wearing or whatever the case, or she's missing. So to anyone, and this is the scene I was thinking of, we know what's going on. But to any outsider, It looks like Atkins' character has just beaten this girl to death. And maybe the sheriff knew something was up with him, and he had a shady, didn't know who he was, but he knew he had no past. So maybe the sheriff and the townspeople who are looking at this spectacle, and originally I envisioned it like in a room, like in a brothel room or a hotel room, in the inn. But this actually would make more sense being like in the town square. So the sheriff and the townspeople take him out into the desert, and I would have him hang him maybe in the big tree that I mentioned that was turning gold with the gold fruit. They suggest shooting him, and the sheriff's like, no, that was my baby girl. I want this to be long and painful. So they leave him up there for the buzzards. They don't hang him by his neck, but they just hang him in the tree for the buzzards to come and get him. And maybe he's there for a while, and he's watching the town, and he's slowly dying in the heat. And Pleasance's character, who is watching from the distance, waits until people aren't looking, and he helps him down. But then in the struggle, the limb breaks on the tree, and this like gold sap oozes out. And again, it's not like metal gold. It's not like liquid mercury or something. But like it's just this gold-colored ooze coming from the tree. And they kind of figure out that something's going on. Both because of their past, had kind of been wearing handkerchiefs when they were outside. Again, this is in my purview right now because of the whole mask type of thing. But maybe they were wearing handkerchiefs or masks or whatever. So maybe that's why they're both immune to whatever's going on, because everyone's outside breathing all the gold dust in the air, and they're covered up. They're filtering a lot of it out. So then maybe while they're talking about this stuff, they hide in the nearby crypt because there's people coming around to look for him, and maybe they realize he's gone, and they think the crypt is the last place they're going to look. And as they hide, maybe they're exchanging their pasts, right? Maybe they're talking about who they are and getting honest with each other, and that's when we reveal who they are. But then as this is happening, a huge wasp-like creature bursts from the dead bodies packed in the crypt. And maybe there's, let's call it 6 bodies, so these 6 giant not humanoid, but big wasps, maybe half the size of a human. They're big. Pop out of these dead bodies, right? So now we're starting to get a feel for what's going on. They trap them inside, and as they trap these things inside, they're seen by the townspeople as they're struggling to keep the crypt closed. So what ends up happening is Pleasance and Atkins are thrown in jail because they're caught by the posse for murder and now accessory to murder, or aiding and abetting. And now the lynch mob comes, the drone-like townspeople are trying to break into the jail, right, to lynch these guys, because fuck these guys, they're not going to get away, we're going to kill them, right? And they're drones, because now they don't know why they're acting this way, but that insect-like behaviors, like they're just trying to do, what they are compelled to do. They don't know why. It's instinct, but it's because the people have these larvae in them, and they're hosting these insects, which are almost brundlefly style, kind of taking over them, except instead of these people turning into bugs, they're hosts for these things. So this is when shit hits the fan. As they're held up in the jail, this becomes like a siege movie in a way. But Pleasance and Atkins hold up in the jail with the sheriff and his remaining crew as they blast the bugs from the sky. They realize the townspeople are hosts and need to be killed, including themselves, except for maybe Pleasance and Atkins' character, because they never had any symptoms. So sheriff opens up the armory, they stock up, devise a plan to take down the bugs. They go building to building, shooting anyone they see. And this is a total... I went through the other ideas, and this one I did last, and I kept thinking, man, I wanted to shoot them up. I wanted these dudes going crazy, pumping lead. And I think that's why I threw this in here. But like they go building to building through this western town, and they're just blowing everybody, and I mean everybody, away. They come toward the center of town, and just as they've gotten about everybody, like an earthquake happens and this giant, queen wasp emerges from under the center of town. So now the mystery is complete, where this giant wasp-like creature was attracting people almost like with bugs to pollen. This gold dust was hanging in the air. Everything was yellow. The tails of gold, right? And all these people are flocking on this town, doing the bidding of the queen like drones, right? Like worker bees, cultivating this town and essentially allowing the wasp's offspring to grow and populate. And then they were going to end up spreading, right? Or at least that's the threat. So, they fire at the bug, no avail. They take you refuge in the bar. And the two hard-drinking outlaws, the note I had, devise a plan to firebomb the queen with the huge liquor supply. So in this case, again, a twist of fate, the decadence of the town pays off. There's rich people there. They want to live it up. The decadence pays off because a huge liquor supply will allow them to torch the sucker. And in this one, I had Pleasance sacrificing himself and having Atkins be the one to pull the trigger and save the day. And two things, Atkins is saved the day and he's alive, but now is he going to turn into one of those things or have those, shit happen to him? And are there more out there? We don't know. So almost like the movie Tremors, could be more to this story. So that's what I came up with. I tried to be original. I tried to stay away from slashers, and I really tried hard. I came up with a bunch of ideas, and every time I started coming up with something that to me sounded like another movie that I'd seen, I stopped and I started over. So I hope you guys enjoy this. That went about 46 minutes, but my name is B. O'Brien. Let me know what you think. Email me at bshowbrien@gmail.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at bshowbrien. Check out Break the Apocalypse if you're into like current events and pop culture and comedy. That's breaktheapp@gmail.com if you have any questions. But other than that, like I said, like and subscribe so that we can keep doing this thing. If you like him, let me know. And I want to know what you guys would do. What kind of movie that you would make to pair up Atkins and Pleasance and in some kind of buddy horror, thriller, sci-fi action movie. But my name's B. O'Brien. I'm out of here for this week. Hopefully you can continue on the spirit of Halloween all year like I do. And if I can help you do that, I will. So take care and peace.